Welcome to EssAnnPee Knowledge Series. In this episode, let us discuss on the topic how to define project scope and create WBS. For any traditional projects, following the waterfall approach or the predictive lifecycle approach, the scope must be well defined. Based on the scope only, we can estimate schedule, cost, and resource requirements. So in the predictive lifecycle approach, it is a plan-driven approach. For the plan, the scope is very basic, fundamental. Based on the scope only, plan is being developed. So in this episode, we are discussing on how to define the scope and create WBS, taking some simple examples. I am Panigrahi, PMP certified and authorized training partner, instructor of PMI USA. Before discussing about the subject, let us first understand from the project perspective, what are the different process groups are there. According to PM book, the Project Management Body of Knowledge 6th edition, there are 5 process groups are there. First is initiation. In the initiation group, we develop the business case. Business case is the justification why we want a new project. What is the need? What is the benefit? That assessment we have to do in the business case. So in the business case, we identify the needs and develop the alternative proposals. And then we develop the feasibility study. And we recommend the best alternative, or they recommend the best alternative to the project sponsor. Once the project sponsor approves the project proposal, then it becomes a project charter. Project charter is a summary approval note. It is a brief about the project at the high level about the project objectives, scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk factors, and the assumptions and constraints, and who are the team members. All these are at a high level, it has been provided in the project charter. So project charter is an authorization to start a new project. Once the project charter has been approved and signed by the project sponsor, he assigns a project manager to initiate a project, authorizing him to use the resources. In the initiation stage, we also identify the stakeholders, because the stakeholders' influence is very high during the initiation stage. So properly to engage the stakeholders, the identification at the early stages is very essential. So once the project charter has been approved and authorizing the manager to initiate the project, the first task of the project manager is to plan. Planning is what to do and how to do. Planning is advanced thinking. What are the activities we have to do and how the activities can be done, and what are the decisions we have to take, and what are the documents we have to create, or what are the tools we have to use. All these things are being planned for the project. Then we have to execute. The execution has to happen as per the plan. Means we have to do the works as per the plan. Then next step is monitor and control. We have to monitor whether the execution is happening as per the plan or not. And in case any deviations are there or the variations are there, then we have to make a control. Control is taking action, like corrective actions or preventive actions. And in case any changes are required, then we have to make a change request also in the controlling stage. Then project is completed. All the deliverables have been completed, handed over to the customer. Then once the customer validates accepts the deliverables, then the project comes for the closing process. In the closing, we have to do all the contractual closures, financial closures, then administrative closures, getting the feedback, archiving the documents what we have created during the project, like financial documents, commercial documents, technical documents, all these things has to be archived for the future use. And also the lessons learned, the document also has to be archived. The lessons learned includes the experiences we have in the project, either it is a good experiences or bad experiences which have been documented, has to be archived for the future use. Once the project is completed, the resources are no more required. So the resources has to be released from the project. Then the project is come to the closure. Then we have to celebrate the project success. So these are the 5 process groups are there. In the planning, we do the integrated planning for the all activities what's supposed to be done in a project. In the integrated planning, one of the subsidiary plan is the scope management. And other managements are there like schedule management, cost management, quality management, communication management, risk management, resource management, the procurement management, and stakeholder management. All these are subsidiary plans of the integrated planning. So we are in this case, we are discussing how to develop the scope, how to define the scope and create the WBS we are discussing. That is a part of the planning stage. Okay. For any project, we have the life cycle. The life cycle is the progression of the different phases from the project, starting of the project till the end of the project. And some of the phases may be overlapping. And one observation we have to make is the monitoring and controlling stage, the phase is starting from the initial stages till the end of the project. So the planning is, we are after the initiation, we are getting the project charter approved, then we are starting with the planning. Okay. In the planning, for the predictive lifecycle approaches, where the traditional projects, first we have to define the scope. So how to define the scope? I will take with an example of constructing an eco-friendly house. With this example, I will explain you how we can collect the requirements, then how we define the scope, then create WBS and validate the scope. Okay. So for the defining the scope and create the WBS, we have the 4 steps are there. First is collect the requirements. Then the second is about the defining the scope. That means we are refining the collecting the requirement, we are further refining. Then we are defining properly the scope. Then about the create WBS, work breakdown structure, then validate the scope. Each of them we are discussing in more detail. First is about the collecting the requirements. We are taking the example of constructing a eco-friendly house. For that, the requirements we are collecting from the various stakeholders, that includes the owner and architect, the builder, and various other stakeholders are there, including the local body authorities. So once we are collecting the requirements we are collecting from the various stakeholders, and the requirements may be from the different perspectives, and these are like scattered, like many requirements are there for the project. For our project is constructing a eco-friendly house. These are the some of the requirements, but these are all in a scattered manner. We are collecting the requirements through brainstorming, through interviews, through observations or surveys, and various other means through expert judgments also, means subject matter experts are there like architects and engineers. From there we are collecting the requirements. Once we are collecting all the requirements, then we have to make a proper grouping, because these scattered requirements, based on that, is very difficult for us to make a proper planning and defining the scope. So therefore, what we are doing is all the requirements are now grouping or categorized. That method is called as the tool is called as a affinity diagram. Through that affinity diagram, what we are doing, we are categorizing all the requirements what we have collected, the data what we have collected, we have grouped it. This method we call as a affinity diagram. The tool is called as a affinity diagram. Affinity means grouping. or categorizing. Once we are categorizing all the requirements, like basic needs, architectural requirements, structural requirements, interiors or exteriors, and then about the plumbing requirements or the electrical requirements, or the this heating, ventilation, and AC, air conditioning requirements, or sustainability requirements, all these things, different requirements were grouped properly. Then we can start with the planning, means that is scope definition. Means we have to define the scope. After refining all the requirements from the different perspectives, then we have to properly filter down to define the scope. Once we define the scope, then the output is a scope statement. Scope statement is a critical document that outlines the boundaries of deliverables and key aspects of the project. Some of the aspects which are some of the elements which includes in a project, the scope statement includes the project goals and objectives. And these goals and objectives must be SMART goals, means specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Then the project deliverables, because every project has certain deliverables. The deliverables may be tangible or intangible, and those are the output and outcomes of a project. That includes about the prototypes, functionalities, or physical products. And in our case, we are talking about the developing constructing a house, eco-friendly house. So what are the scope statement includes in a house construction? I will explain in the subsequent slides. So the next is, in the scope statement, one of the element is about the scope description. The scope description means details of the description of all the works what's supposed to be done in a project. And then acceptance criteria means what are the quality norms or the criteria through which the customer may accept or reject the output. So that criteria must be well defined. Then we have a project exclusions. Here, one example I will give you. What is a project execution? We can understand. Suppose the project is to construct a house. The owner engaged a builder through a contract. And during the contract signing and negotiating, it was very clearly talks about what the scope and the plans, the architectural designs and all things are shared with the builder. The builder is supposed to construct as per the plan. The builder is constructed already and handed over to the customer, the owner. Now owner is validating or he is verifying and inspecting. During the validation or inspection stage, he went to the site, the house, and he was very much excited. Now, very nicely the house was constructed. Then he want to make a testing of some of the items. So he went to washroom. In the washroom, he opened the tap, water tap, but water is not coming. Then he tried with the switches, all the electric switches, switch boards and all things very nicely placed in proper places. He switched on the light, but light is not burning. He switched on the fan, fan is not running. Then he surprised and inquired the builder, hey, what you have done? Water is not coming, electricity is not there, and fans are not running, and lights are not on. Then the builder tells, sir, I have done as per your plan. Exactly as per the plan I have done, everything is okay with. Then their arguments and counter arguments are going on. Here, in this case is, in the plan, all the fixtures and all things are properly designed as per the design and the plan the builder has done. But one of the exclusions means it's not specified in the contract about the electricity connection or the water connection which is supposed to be taken from the local authorities. That was not mentioned in the contract and the scope of the project. So therefore, the builder has done, the project is constructed and the building is constructed as per the plan. But in the contract, that exclusions are not very specifically mentioned, but inclusions also not specifically mentioned. So therefore, if it is not there in the contract, the builder will not construct or do those activities. So that is very important of the exclusions to write down very clearly. Then otherwise the litigation happens. In this case, the litigation arguments are going on because of that things which are not very specifically mentioned in the contract or the scope of the work. So whenever you are defining the scope, the inclusions and exclusions supposed to be mentioned very explicitly. What is included, the activities, what we are supposed to be done, and what are the excluded means those are not part of the project or in the scope of the project. So that is very important of the exclusions. So then constraints, the limitations, the time limitation, are the technical limitations, are the resource availability limitations, are the budget limitations. These also must be there in the scope statement. Then we have assumptions. When we are starting any of the project, even at the early stages of the initiation itself, in the feasibility study development also, we assume something. Like assumptions are, the funds are available, the resources are available, the technology is available, or the resources are capable and skilled. So these are some of assumptions we make. But always the assumptions are the beliefs to be true at the time of the initiations, or at the time of assumptions, those are being true, believed to be true, but may not be true always. Suppose at the time of the initial stages of the project, we may assume that interest rate, which we are taking the loan from the bank, the interest rate is at 12%. That is an assumption based on the prevailing rates. But during the execution, the interest rates may go up or come down. It need not be always remain the same as we assumed. So when the assumption fails, generally projects at loss. Okay. So then project milestones, the major milestones has to be mentioned. Milestones are the significant achievement points on the timeline. When we talk the points on the timeline, these are specific dates. And milestone doesn't have any duration. It is a zero duration because we call these are the significant achievement points on the timeline. Okay. Then the stakeholders' requirements from the various perspectives. We have to collect the stakeholders' requirement from the local authorities, for example, or any regulating authorities from that point of view, and various other stakeholders' point of view also. We have to take the requirements accordingly. Those things has to be stated in the scope statement. Then the project boundaries, already I told you about the inclusions and exclusions, that is the in scope and out scope. The boundaries has to be very clearly stated in the scope statement. Now the construction of a house, in the scope statement, as I told you, this is an example we have taken. And what are the various elements are there for construction of a eco-friendly 3-bedroom and a guest room, plus 3 bathrooms, the residence house we are constructing. For that, what are the first is objective, because whenever making the scope statement, the objective must be very clearly stated. That objective includes the constructing an eco-friendly residential house with a modern design that includes 3 bedrooms, a guest room, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and a designed outdoor living space. These are the broad objectives. And the completion, the limitations also there. The budget is 2 crores. And the timelines are within 6 months. And we have to achieve the high standards of the quality, energy efficiency, and compliance with the local body, the building codes and regulations. So this is an objective. This is a part of the scope statement. And similarly, we have the product deliverables. These are the various deliverables: the foundation, framing, roofing, then exterior walls, interior walls, windows, doors, plumbing works, electrical works, then HVAC, that means heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, installations or interior finishes, appliances, then external that finishes, safety and compliance related, and outdoor space. These are some of the deliverables. And these are the elements of the scope statement. And similarly, the project constraints. The constraints are about the budget. Constraint budget is 2 crores. And the timelines are 6 months. And what are the regulatory requirements also to be met? That's also constraint related. So those constraint has to be mentioned. Then about the project assumptions. The assumption is the land is already purchased and zoned for the residential constructions. And all necessary permits will be obtained without significant delays. The availability of the skilled laborers and materials are there. And the product site is ready for construction with no major grading requirements. The materials will be available as planned without significant delays. The homeowner will make the timely decisions regarding the finishes and the customizations. So these are some of the assumptions we make. This is also part of the scope statement. Then project exclusions. The permits for the electricity and water connections are outside the scope of the project and shall be the responsibility of the owner of the house. And no constructions of additional structures such as the servant room or the sheds, landscaping beyond the specified garden areas are outside the scope, and no provision for the future expansion or additional floors. These are some of the exclusions, means out scope, which are not part of the project. Then the acceptance criteria also must be there, very clearly must be defined. The acceptance criteria that includes the house meets all the outlined structure, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC specifications. And the house passes all the inspection requirements by the local authorities. So these are some of the acceptance criteria, means once the handing over happens for the house, and what are the requirements has to be fulfilled. And as per the requirements, that is the acceptance criteria. Okay. Then milestones. This is also a part of the scope statement. And the milestones are, as I told you, significant achievement points and the timeline. So the significant achievement points like the project kickoff meeting, that the week 1 has to be completed, and the foundation completion week 4, framing completion week 8, roofing installation week 10. Like this, these are the specific timelines are mentioned about the milestones. Then the stakeholders approval. Who are the stakeholders? Here the owner is the stakeholder, the important stakeholder. We are handing over after the project is completed, we are handing over to the house owner. And the architect is also one of the stakeholder. He has to approve the architectural designs and architectural drawings and plans. And the general contractor or the project manager, relevant regulating authorities where we have to get the permits and all things, that approvals we have to get it. So these are the various stakeholders for the approvals. So these are all part of the scope statement. Once the scope statement is been done, then we have to go create a WBS, work breakdown structure. Means the scope statement is all the works supposed to be done for a project, but these works has to be broken down into small manageable work packages. The purpose is at the work package level, we can easily estimate the schedule and the cost and the resource requirement also. So that is the purpose. We are breaking down the entire project into small manageable work packages. So here some of the elements of the how to do with the work breakdown structure I'm mentioning. The work breakdown structure is a hierarchical structure. Hierarchically, we are making the breakdown, means category wise, we are making further down from the top to down, we are breaking down. So at the bottom, the work package level, we can easily estimate the schedule and the cost and resource requirements. And it is delivery focused, means it is a focus on the output, the elements. Then it is decomposed into different levels. And each of the level, we are giving certain codes. The codes reflects the level of the breakdown. Then also it is a mutually exclusive and distinct unique elements or components. And you have to follow the 100% rule. That means what is the scope of the work, what is stated in the scope statement, that is the scope statement of all the works what's supposed to be done in a project, and 100% of those scope, the works supposed to be reflected in the WBS, the work breakdown structure. In the 100% rule means no less, no more. Means it has to be exactly as per the scope statement only. No amount of the works, lesser amount of the works or more works are not allowed. It is 100% rule we have to follow. Okay, no less, no more. Now, for our project, that example we have taken, construction of a eco-friendly house, the 3 bedrooms and the 3 bathrooms and that house. And the first level we are making the breakdown, and this is the first level of the breakdown. And the first level of breakdown we also call as a control account. And we generally start with certain coding, because each of the levels we are coding. So here we are coding like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, like that coding we have started with. So this is the first level is about the control account. For better controlling the activities down the line, and so that we have a better controls about the spend analysis, or also about the progress of the project, we can easily trace it out. For that reason, we have to properly coding has to be required. And now each of this level, each of the component under this level are further broken down. These are many other elements are there. So each of the element of this first level are further broken down like this, like this. These are the further broken down. And these are called planning packages. During this, means these planning packages at this level, we are unable to make the estimations for the scope, for the schedule and the cost and the resource requirements. That means these planning packages further need to be broken down into work packages. So these, for example, the forming and framing and roofing, these packages, these planning packages, further we are dividing into work packages. So each of them, for example, the wall framing, we are dividing into the wall exteriors wall and built interior walls. So these are further we are breaking down. Okay, this process we call it the decompose. Decompose is a technical word of the breaking down that high level works or the tasks into the lower level tasks. So each of these, the planning packages, we are breaking down into further the work package levels. These are the different work packages. So as I told you, at the top, we have the project level, high level. And the first level of decomposition we call as generally is a control account. And control account is further broken down into the planning packages. And planning packages further we are breaking down into work packages. At the work package level, we can easily estimate the schedule, cost, and resource requirement. So therefore, and the entire project we are breaking down to the high level to the down level tasks. Okay, that is work package levels. Okay. So once we done the WBS, then also we had to create a WBS dictionary. The WBS dictionary is a summary about the scope, deliverables, activities, schedule, cost, quality, and other aspects of each of the work package. Means we have created the WBS. You see at the bottom of the WBS, we have the work packages. For each of the work package, we have to create a summary note like this. For each of the work package, we have to create a summary note like this. The summary notes includes like the scope of the work package and the deliverables, their activities, the schedule, cost, quality, and other risk factors, durations, all these things are there in the summary note. So the WBS dictionary is a collection of the summary notes of each of the work package. Means for each of the work package, we have created like these summaries, and these all summaries coming collectively, we call it as a WBS dictionary. The WBS dictionary is like a summary notes are available at any point of the time during the execution or in the closing of the project also. If you want to refer, if suppose there is a dispute is there with the builders or the contractors, we can easily make a reference of this. And also, who is the responsible, the department or the person, that is also mentioned as a summary like for each of the work package here. Like responsible department or the persons, these also been available here, so that during the any time of the project, we can easily make a reference about each of the project, each of the work package. Okay. Now, once we develop define the scope and develop the WBS and WBS dictionary, and all these things are approved, then the scope baselines happens. The baselines are the approved versions. Means the scope plan has been approved, then the baselines forms. The baseline is the approved version, and these are the reference point for the schedule, for the execution. These are the baselines are the reference points for the execution and also for the monitoring and controlling. That means based on the baselines only, we have to execute, and also whether the execution is happening or not with reference to the baselines, we have to make a reference. So the baseline, the scope baseline consists of the three elements. One is the scope statement, the work breakdown structure, and WBS dictionary. Collectively, these three we call it the baseline. Okay. Then we are going to the last step of the scope management. Here they validate the scope. Validate means formalizing the acceptance. Means once the customer accepts, that means validates, then only project comes to the closure. So the validate scope is very important step at the end of the project. The importance of the validate scope is it's formalizing the acceptance of the deliverables by the concerned stakeholders. Then scope verification, that's the comparison with the original requirements or this plan. Then ensure the quality deliverables, that inspection and testing also has to be happen in the validation stage. Then the stakeholder satisfaction, which ultimately it has to meet the quality requirements as per the customer's requirements, which are being defined in the scope statement itself. Okay. Then the documentation records are to be maintained, and also facilitate the project closure. This is the very important for the closing of the project. Without the validation, means the customer is not accepted, for example, then we can't come to the closing of the project. Then who will validate the scope? For example, the sponsor, and the client are the customer, and the project manager or the project team members are the quality assurance team, and the functional managers are the regulating bodies. These are the authorities. Generally, they validate the scope. When we are discussing about the validate scope, very importantly, we have to understand about the scope creep. Scope creep is uncontrolled expansion of work. That means we have executed some extra work which are not there originally in the scope plan. These are unauthorized works. These unauthorized extra works which we are executed called as a scope creep, and this also has to be verified while we are doing the validate scope. Okay. And with this, we come to the end of the session. We are covered for the defining the scope with an example of the eco-friendly construction of a house, and how to define the scope we have discussed, and how to create the WBS we have discussed. With these four elements also we discussed about the collecting the requirements, define the scope, then create WBS and validate the scope. So hope you like this session. And if you like it, please click like button and also subscribe to my channel. And I'm Panigrahi. This is my contact details. Thanks a lot.